Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest Best Picture nominees of 2021. It's our first episode talking about the Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars ceremony. We're taking a break from our regular quest content and going to dive into what films the Academy thinks are the best this year. We're going to talk about them. We're going to rank them. We're going to pick our favorite before the ceremony. And then when it all gets wrapped up and the winner is revealed, we'll talk about it in conjunction with the rest of our quest list. Try to figure out where it goes, comparing all the other Best Picture winners. But today we're talking about nominees. We're going to start things off with Judas and the Black Messiah from this year, directed by Shaka King, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, and Jesse Plemons as the three main roles in the film. A historical movie, a bit of a biopic, a movie that I personally quite enjoyed a lot. And I'm excited actually to hear what you guys have to say. I'm joined today, in case you were wondering, it's the exact same fools that I'm always accompanied with. It's Tucker, Tanner, and Abram. My name's Timo. So let's just get started. Judas and the Black Messiah. Abram, your first thoughts. Let's hear them.
I think this movie's excellent. I really enjoyed it. Something I was considering as I was watching. For me, whenever we're watching a film that is depicting a very important event, I try to think about, in the context of an interesting historical narrative, does this work? But also in the context of being a stylistically presented and well conceptualized film, does it work too? Or is it the story propping up the entire picture? But I don't think that's the case here. I think this is an incredible chapter of history that's being presented with very good filmmaking. I think Judas is incredible.
Yeah.
Tanner.
It is certainly stylistic as all hell. I will give this film that. It slaps you right in the face with its style, and it doesn't let up for 2 hours or however long this movie. Honestly, it just flew by because I was so invested. I love this movie a lot. I was bordering on a it might be showing my hand a little bit. I was bordering on a 5-star rating, so as a result of this discussion, I could go up from a 4.5 to a 5-star on this.
Well, I don't want to spoil the fun, but this film will get ranked at number one.
Oh yeah,
we don't really have much of a choice in this matter. We'll see how it stacks up once we talk about the next film. But Tucker, your final thoughts, and then we can get into the finer points.
Yeah, we saw it actually last night. We went to a theater and we sat down, and I was honestly really surprised at how stylistic it was. I honestly didn't know the framing of the movie, which is what I think makes the story so compelling. You're telling sort of a dual narrative from a really unique perspective. And while I did have to run as fast as my little legs could and go to the bathroom and go pee, unfortunately, I missed the scene where Fred Hampton gets arrested the first time, which is important. I got back and I'm like, Tanner, what happened? He's like, oh, yeah, Fred got arrested. I'm like,
there was a 1-year time jump, and Fred Hampton got arrested. Maybe yeah, so possibly the worst time that you go to the bathroom.
Well, yes. I didn't know. I hadn't seen the movie before, but I really, really, really did enjoy it, and I'm very excited to discuss it. Just break it down.
Yeah, so I think we should do that. I can start. When thinking about this movie, Abram, you mentioned like the historical context, and it is trying to present itself as like a truthful account of this element that is this event that has been largely swept under the rug. Did you guys know about the goings on with Fred Hampton in Chicago with the Illinois Black Panther Party and the FBI infiltration and all of that before watching this film?
I knew about, sort of the social programs that the Black Panthers were running. I knew that Fred Hampton was, spoilers for this movie and for history, I suppose, he was murdered in his sleep with several other Black Panthers.
Spoilers
when the FBI,
for life.
Spoilers for history. When the FBI broke into the house and, started firing, they just started shooting into this house willy-nilly and killing Fred Hampton. So yeah, I was aware of some of the historical context. I was not aware entirely of the character or real life person of Bill O'Neill, who just happens to be the main character of this. That's really the larger question surrounding this film as it got nominated for Oscars is Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield both nominated for supporting actor.
But there are no nominations for lead actor.
Yes.
Yeah.
For this film.
Do you want me to go through those?
Yeah, let's just talk about them.
And nominated for Best Picture, nominated, as Tanner was saying, for Best Supporting Actor 2 times for both Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, nominated for Best Original Screenplay, and as well for best cinematography. 6 noms there. That's what we're looking at.
And original song, if you yeah.
Oh, what? Hold on, that doesn't show up on the Google thing.
Yeah,
but
it was. I'm pretty sure it was
original.
nominated for original song, but I don't know how much that's going to play into our evaluation of it.
I believe that puts Judas and Black Messiah tied with a couple other films for second most noms. Mank has 10, which I'm sure we'll discuss when we get to that review. But a lot of other films have 6 apiece, so it's a very competitive year. I haven't seen all the nominations. This is definitely my front runner of the ones I have seen so far. But in terms of the actors, in terms of not even who should have been up for actor, who should have been up for supporting actor, I just think they're both excellent. I think both men do incredible jobs. Some of their performance, I think, is sort of characterized by who they have to be. I think Lakeith Stanfield's a lot more subtle, just by nature of his role, which for me brought Daniel Kaluuya to the foreground because he has such a passion and energy about him. Partially, I think, because he is playing Fred Hampton, who is such a charismatic person, but they both come across really well.
I honestly, what really pulled me into the film was, for me, Lakeith Stanfield's performance. The emotional resonance on that man's face, his little twitches of his eyes and the corners of his mouth and his subtle facial expressions are next level. It's insane. I mean, from that first opening scene of him bungling a car theft, you get him pulling away in the car and the camera's trained on his face, and you see his confidence go from 100 to negative 100 in one facial transition, and it's really impressive. This is completely useless, but I'm campaigning, quote unquote, for Lakeith Stanfield to be considered the lead actor. Not only because personally I resonate with his performance a little more, but I see the movie as more framed around Bill O'Neill's story. Obviously, it still equals screen times about Fred Hampton, but the fact that it's through the eyes from the opening credits to the closing credits, through the eyes of Bill O'Neill and his story around it, I think he's probably the main character in my eyes.
Yeah. Important to mention, Lakeith Stanfield not nominated for nearly as awards in the past as Daniel Kaluuya has. So, I mean, while they're both great performances, maybe it's time for Lakeith Stanfield to get his due. He's great in Uncut Gems, among other movies. I mean, he's got a lot of pretty good performances that maybe have been slept on in previous years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry to bother you. He's excellent in that film.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, it's okay. You can
bizarre movie.
That's a good movie. We'll get into ignore Tucker's dumb pun at the title of that film. But we talked about Lakeith Stanfield. Daniel Kaluuya, though. Let me tell you, Daniel Kaluuya. Abrams said this. It just exudes charisma as Fred Hampton. He absolutely bodies and embodies the role of Fred Hampton. Bodies Tucker since you don't know, bodies is a colloquial term for really speaking over something, for really getting into it.
Yeah, I know what the word means.
Well, nonetheless, Fred Hampton, Daniel Kaluuya, they're basically one and the same in this movie, and he just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, I completely bought while I was watching. Sometimes in films you have a character that's written and they need to be very charismatic for this plot to work. They need to have sway over people, and they need to be able to convince, essentially, opposing forces to join sides or whatever, in order to get their goals. But in Judas and the Black Messiah, Daniel Kaluuya and as Fred Hampton is so convincingly charismatic. You see that he just holds these, in the scene where he comes back from prison and is the "I am a revolutionary" speech, I guess is what it's called. And you can see the audience is just rapt. They are just totally paying attention to him, through the filmmaking. And there's some other, I think, some pretty cool elements in that scene as well. Just like, his performance is sold so well. It fits with the character. And like you said, I believed it like that. I mean, he was like, I saw him and I was like, yep, that's Fred Hampton.
Yeah. I think what's so incredible about that is that the film is able to have these sequences that evoke such tension, and Fred Hampton is able to be a salve over that tension. Like when they go to the Southern Pride rally, or when they confront the crowns and they hold up the falsified government document. And Fred Hampton's he's just calm. And it creates this really awesome juxtaposition between the sequence and what the audience is feeling and how Fred is reacting to it. And I think that's part of why the film is just so magnetic from sequence to sequence.
Yeah,
I've got to say, I think that the best aspect of both Daniel Kaluuya's performance, the script writing in terms of Fred Hampton as a character, obviously a real person, is taking this figurehead, this leader who is clearly very charismatic and can convince people of basically anything if he gets up in front of them and spews his words. That was not the right way to frame that, but is that we also get a very human side of him. You get the internal conflict. You get him dealing with trying to balance his ideals with having a family, and it's really interesting to see such a human and personal side of a leader, because you get lots of movies about leaders, but they're usually propped up as these figureheads and not really given the emotional and character, quote unquote, development that this got. And I think that's why his performance worked so well.
Yeah. He's that human side of him is shown very well with Dominique Fishback portraying Deborah Johnson, his girlfriend at the time. And yeah, she was also very strong. She had that great monologue where she's reading a piece of her poetry about bringing her child into this revolution that the Black Panthers are trying to start. She was also great. All the more supporting characters, I don't know the actors' names, but like Jimmy Walker, Jake Winters. The scenes that they had, who's the one guy that was always with them? He was always with Fred Hampton. He's like a skinnier guy.
With the glasses.
Yeah, with the glasses.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of There's a lot of smaller supporting characters in this movie. And to be honest, I've got to say, I think my biggest criticism with the film and one thing holding it back from that really perfect score is that sometimes there were characters that showed up. I'm like, okay, well, I can't exactly remember their name. I can't exactly remember what their context is in their relation to the Black Panther Party. There was a lot of characters in this film that naturally served similar roles because they're all part of the same party, but it made it hard for me to keep track of so many people.
I found that happening to me a little bit when a couple of the members are killed in the film, and there was one of them, I think the first man who was killed, I was not quite sure who he was. I understood
the guy that was in the hospital.
Yeah, that guy.
Jimmy
Instead,
Palmer.
Yeah,
that was the character's name at least.
Yeah, so I like understood that, and I understood the outrage within the party about the whole deal, but like the character wasn't, I guess, fleshed out quite enough for me to really get it. And I think the second one had a better death, the one in the like oil refinery or whatever.
Yeah.
That was a cool scene. I really like that scene. And so like, I don't know, I guess the coolness of it weighed out for me in terms of like how he died as opposed to the previous one. So the side characters, yeah, there are kind of a lot of them. And especially when we get talking about the FBI characters. Basically they and that whole A or B plot, the film is dual narrative, so there's two of them going on at once.
Yeah.
I think off of that point, actually, a lot of these sort of not dropped characters, but underdeveloped characters comes from the fact that there is so much happening in the story. And my biggest issue with the film is pacing, but not because I think it ever moves too fast or moves too slow, but because some of the sequences it chooses to show or doesn't show ends up hurting the overall narrative, I think. So not seeing Bill O'Neill really come into his own. How did he begin getting into the Black Panthers? We don't see a lot of that rise. And I think that if the film had paced itself a little bit differently and put a little bit more emphasis on the conflict between Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya and had everything else a little bit more in the background, it might have not had these moments where characters felt like they weren't getting their screen time or where certain things were glazed over. I think a little bit of a sharper lens would have helped the film.
Yeah, I definitely think that some of that initial stuff up front of him joining the Black Panther Party was probably lost on the cutting room floor of this film, because it definitely feels like that's something they would have shot, and just for the sake of time, probably cut that out.
I was thinking though, to interrupt you, Tanner, about because I'm going to. They just like, I've learned about the cutting the obvious scene and skip a beat narration as a Spielberg tactic, and I felt that also going on in this film, that there are scenes that we don't see that are obvious. I don't need to see them because I know what happens. I don't need the film to tell me because I can infer it, and it makes me feel stupid as a viewer to have them include that. And so some of those that you're talking about, I feel fall into those categories. But continue.
Yeah, I did make a joke of, not a joke. I made a note about that rather while I was watching this. It's that I really like that it doesn't hold your hand, like right up front when Bill O'Neill gets arrested and he meets Jesse Plemons. I forget his character's name, but when he meets him, the film doesn't hold your hand on like, we want you to be an informant. This is what we want you to do. The scene literally ends with the line, or you can go home, and then it cuts. And then I love that. Yeah. I really love that it's not, because we get it. We understand what's happening. We're smart boys and girls in the theater there. All right, we get what's going on.
I think it's a great stylistic choice, but something that's really interesting at the beginning of the film is Bill O'Neill's ambivalence towards the Panthers. And I think if we had some early sequences of him getting into the party and having his thoughts develop on the group, that would have been interesting. So it's obvious from a plot level what was not shown, but I think some of the character arcs and the movements and sort of the themes of what weren't shown could have felt really powerful had they been shot and put in the film.
Some of what I felt like I was missing from Bill O'Neill's character is that conflict. I understood, and I really wanted to see the internal conflict of him being the informant and essentially being against the Black Panthers. You know, he's not their friend, but also being so integral to it and being a high-ranking member. And I, just personally, I can't see someone getting that high up without really believing it. And so, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that internal struggle of his, maybe the Black Panthers are feeding 3,000 kids a week. Like, that's good. Like, why am I ratting out to the FBI besides the fact that he has no choice,
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about, looking back and talking about this, his Bill O'Neill's motivation. I realized that I did interpret a lot of it, and it's really interesting to break that down because towards the end, you get the impression that he is starting to buy into it. Jesse Plemons has that line where he's like, "This guy deserves an Academy Award," which, yes, true, good point, Jesse Plemons, he does.
Kind of meta, yeah.
But what's really interesting is that he's sort of ambivalent, because I was like, well, is he against the Black Panther Party initially? But no, he's just ambivalent towards it. He takes an easy out, and then he's just doing this because it's getting him paid and it's not sending him to prison, and B, and the FBI sort of puppeteered him into this, is that he gets to a certain point in the organization where he's like, if I drop out now, they're going to have some sort of retribution against me because I was an informant to the FBI. And so he's trapped in there by the FBI, and he's trapped in there by his own circumstances, as he doesn't want to go to prison. And regardless of if he believes it or not, he's in this situation where he has to sell out Fred Hampton. And I think at the title cards at the end, you do see that he carried that regret into the latter years of his life before he committed suicide on the night that a documentary, a PBS documentary of some sort, aired about this.
That he had agreed to interview for, that he did an interview with, and then he killed himself before he could watch it.
Yeah, and I think that really plays into the title of this movie is Judas and the Black Messiah. Bill O'Neill's obviously this Judas figure. I'm not super up on my biblical lore, but I'm fairly certain Judas was bribed into this by the Romans. It's not that he hated Judas. It's not that Judas hated Jesus. It's just that he was bribed into it. Of circumstances, he sold out the Messiah in this context.
I think it's a great title. Just
Yeah, it is. I mean, I honestly not. Well,
Tucker,
hello?
yeah,
we good?
I like the way they never name drop the title, right? So
they do it a little bit. Michael Sheen does say we need to stop them from making a Black Messiah.
Yeah, that's as close as they get. And so
that's as close as they get.
I mean, you do have to sort of slip that into your film, but I do like that the title is a little separated, is a little different, and then brings up this allusion to this biblical allusion that we're talking about.
One thing I think we just need to talk about a little more outside of story is just the filmmaking fundamentals that this
Oh, yeah,
movie has.
absolutely.
I mean, it's got a great score. It's
Oh, yeah.
got fantastic cinematography. It's edited in such interesting ways that allows you to for the most part, keep track of all these intertwining stories. And I just found myself hooked from the beginning when you get all these interesting long shots and really good lighting. You hear the score come in. There's one cut where after Bill asks to get a car and it cuts to the car and you hear this car horn. It's not a car horn, it's the saxophone, and it sounds like a car horn, and the saxophone transitions into music, but then it comes back to that note and it sounds like a car horn again. You're like, whoa, there's layers going on here. And just in that moment, I'm like, there's really stylistic choices and everything sort of playing into one another. And the craziest thing is this is a second feature film from Shaka Khan.
Yeah.
Like, huh? Tim was saying earlier he's using like Spielberg style tactics. Like this guy, he probably has a huge career ahead of him.
Yeah. I want to shout out the very opening of this. When you first see Bill O'Neill, he's in his Dick Tracy get up, as he says, and it's that really dissonant jazz tone that really brings you into this film, and it's great. It's a great note to start the film on.
Yeah, because I mean, not only is that dissonant, but in the music, the entire story is dissonant. It's layers of corruption in the FBI, and you as a viewer are getting more and more uncomfortable as you realize the FBI is just not on the side of actual justice here, and they're lying and writing things to get what they want and label people as terrorists. And there's so much here that walking out, I'm like, wow, the American education system really failed me, huh? Because I didn't know about almost any of this, and I probably before this could not have told you who Fred Hampton was, just because we don't really learn about this kind of stuff in history classes, and I think that's why this film is so important. Is it covers not only an interesting story as a film, interesting story with intertwining characters that tells a unique and compelling plot, but it's factually true, and now I know more about history.
So to get Tucker to be interested in history, now that is a feat, and there should be an Academy Award on its own for that.
More filmmaking fundamentals. One shot I really liked is when they return back to that bar that Lakeith Stanfield, Bill O'Neill tries to steal the car from at the beginning, and it's him sitting in the car, and I think the bar's called Lou's or something like that, and it's reflected right onto his face because of the car window.
That's another Spielberg tactic.
Yeah, it's great. Just that shot alone, like holy, look at that. And that whole scene in the bar is very tense and great, by the way. Another really great intense scene I want to say, and they accomplish this in 3 words. Is when it's after they see the crowns and the 2 Black Panthers sort of take Bill O'Neill and like, we're going for a drive or whatever, and they pull up to this secluded alley or whatever, and they're like, are you an informant? They're saying something about a badge, and they don't believe him about the story that he's telling, and he's like, I hotwired this car, that's how I got it. And the guy from the backseat just says, do it again. And at that moment, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was a really good moment.
That's a great moment right there. And he's like, yeah, I'll just do it. I don't have my tools. He's like, do it again.
And then he actually knows how to do it.
He does know how to do it. I think I took from that he just kind of guessed. I think he just kind of guessed what wires to put together, and it worked. So, but that's a great scene regardless.
I don't think so. I think what made that scene so interesting is that he knows how to do this, because we see that this is his beat. He pretends to be an agent. He goes in there, he robs the place, right? Steals a car. So why that scene was so successful is because he's telling the truth there, but now he actually is with the FBI. His old lie is servicing him here, but only halfway. If they push a little bit harder, because they're right. Yeah, he's with the feds, but this specific thing is true, which is why I love the shot after that, the reaction shot we just see on his face. Like just for a second, like he looks at the driver's side window and you can just see his face change. He's like, I was that close. Yeah. And another moment, by the way, which is why Lakeith Stanfield did so well in the film, but that's a great sequence on the whole.
I think we also have to touch on the fact that this is also about the FBI, and I was bringing that in earlier, but Jesse Plemons as I don't think any of us can remember his character name.
Roy Mitchell.
Sure, yeah.
Roy, yeah.
But the relationship that builds between the two of them in some ways and then is subverted in others. And I think that makes that whole section of the film, it's a pretty minor part in comparison to the rest of the overall story, but makes that so compelling. And every time you return back to these restaurants, these fancy restaurants, like character tension is about to go down, and it gets you geared up for a really interesting moment of character development. There's just a relationship there between like the setting of that restaurant and me thinking, oh, oof, Bill's going to go through some crap right now, and he's going to have to do something he doesn't want to, and that's going to, set up a whole chain of events in his head. And just seeing him deal with that is, I think, the most interesting part of the film, and him balancing his desire to support the people who are his friends. He's been with them for years, and he does genuinely believe in the cause to the point that he's willing to blow up a building for it. Like, there's such a conflict there that builds, I think, especially through those scenes with Jesse Plemons. I loved it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that I don't think he wanted to blow up that building because he was trying to get Fred Hampton to say he wanted to because he's wearing a wire after.
True.
And I think
I didn't catch that.
And trap him. Yeah.
Which is when the relationship gets really interesting, when you think that Jesse Plemons and Keith Stanfield are on good terms, and then he just he pushes him harder as Jesse Plemons is being pushed harder.
He pushes him. Jesse Plemons is pushed harder at the behest of J. Edgar Hoover, famous bad guy in history, portrayed by Martin Sheen.
I actually saw a headline recently. I read a little bit of an article about how one of the FBI buildings is still named after J. Edgar Hoover. And some congressperson watched this movie and then was like, we need to rename that building. We can't name this after this guy anymore because holy shit, what he did was not good. Yeah. An interesting little anecdote and an example of how you can make films for good. You can make films to make some change. For all you young aspiring filmmakers out there, I'm talking to myself right there.
Yeah, like you.
Those presentations though, out of all the emotions and about all the interesting stuff that this film made me feel, I came out of it damn angry. I was pissed when this film was done. And when I tell people and I say that, I saw this movie, and they're like, oh, how was it? I was like, I say, I came out feeling very angry, and I was like, and that's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Lil Rel Howery as Wayne, another FBI informant that he meets in the bar. It's a great little scene that they have there, where he's like, Bill O'Neill is getting so paranoid. He's like, are they gonna kill me? Are they gonna out me to the Black Panthers? What's my fate in all this? And Lil Rel Howery is just not helpful at all in any of that. He's just very mysterious. I like that. Speaking of the development of Fred Hampton and Bill O'Neill's character, it sort of comes to a head in the Last Supper scene, if you will, if we're doing this biblical thematic line, where they're all sitting in the house that Fred Hampton will ultimately get murdered in, and there's just some really good character moments in there where they're telling Fred Hampton he should leave to Cuba or Algeria, and he's like, why are you guys sitting around telling me I need to get out of here when we are supposed to be talking about building this medical center? And I believe that parallels a similar line in the Bible to what Jesus had when the disciples were all like, you got to get out of here. The Romans are going to come looking for you. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to chill here with my buds. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what they say in the Bible, actually.
Yeah.
And then finally, that ends with Lakeith Stanfield. He's maybe the most overtly worried he looked as in his entire tenure at with the Black Panthers. He's like, "Can I get you a drink?" And obviously, that means that he slipped Fred Hampton the chemicals or the concoction that made him put into a coma, essentially, for when the FBI raided their house.
Yeah, and that raid sequence, good googly moogly. I mean, it's really powerful, and I think that it's all shot in the dark, mostly lit by the flashes of light from the guns and the perforations of the bullets through the walls, and you don't know who's getting hit or what room they're in, and you're really disoriented. And then the lights flipped on. You find out that Fred is asleep, and Deborah's trying to wake him, but then she gets pulled away, and the camera stays trained on her face the entire time. well, Fred is murdered behind her. And
Yes.
that's such a good emotional choice to center it around the reactions of a character, of someone that heard the person they love get murdered
Mhm.
right behind them. Like, there's just a lot of fundamental emotional weight there, and I think it worked really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think the action sequences in this film are actually pretty well done, pretty tasteful. You can go kind of crazy all out sometimes, especially when you're like a character-based drama, as this one is. When you have those moments where they're, shooting, it's firefights. It's just like any other action movie. But I think it is done consistently. It's tonally consistent, and it's cinematographically, it's the same. They shoot those sequences in a similar way that they shoot the other stuff, and it's also very tense. And because we're so invested in these characters, that a character death, I think, really does mean a lot, or the prospect of one in a big firefight like we saw a couple times in the film. And those are me like boom, me like explosion. Those are just fun to watch, and they're amazing to think about how they made. Those are not easy sequences to just film.
Yeah. Or do you guys have anything else you want to talk about, or should we do our final thoughts on this, on our first 2020 Best Picture nominee?
I think it's final thought time.
Yeah, I think we're gonna hit it up with our last tidbits, our last supper of discussion. So Tucker,
yes,
what do you have to wrap us up?
I just have to say that throughout this whole thing, I'm very glad we were able to have this discussion, because you guys were able to clear up a few things story-wise and tonally for me. That makes me realize that this movie is more well constructed than even I came out of it giving it 9 out of 10 realized. And yeah, I mean, this is just such an important movie. I mean, what Timo said is making him angry. It's how film can be used as not only political force, but also an emotional one, appealing to your sensibilities by introducing you to characters that you might not know anything about, and seeing it through their eyes, because that's how film works. And I'm so glad that this film is getting the recognition that it deserves. Whether you're or not you're satisfied with the categories it was nominated for, it's certainly one of the ones that's up there, as we said. And I think that it's unlikely it wins Best Picture, because it is such a grating story to tell. It doesn't frame America in a good light, but it certainly is deserving of a nomination, and I would be very happy if it won.
Yes.
Tanner, we're going around the horn here.
We're going around the horn here. Okay. This film just has a lot going for it. It's very stylishly made. It's the first time that, Fred Hampton's political beliefs and the political operandus of, I'm not sure if I used the right one there. The political operations of the Black Panther Party were put accurately to screen in a popular narrative film. And on top of that, it's so stylishly made, well directed, incredibly well performances. I don't know what I'm saying. There are great performances in here. I'm right along there with Tucker. I don't think this will win Best Picture. I'd be delighted if it did, and it's going to be hard to stack the other 7 nominees up against this, but we're going to do our best.
Abram, you, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think this film, it really is incredible. We touched on it a little bit. I think that certain character arcs and moments should have been put a little bit more central, maybe included in the film a little bit more. But outside of that, it's excellent. When I'm watching a film, I look for sort of thematic resonance, and obviously I felt that. And I also look for style, and that's here in spades. And in terms of the narrative itself, I've studied American history a lot. I took AP American History, which should be like the look at American history through the lens of like higher level, high school level education. And I didn't learn this stuff, So I feel like I learned something, and it's a story people should know, and especially in the context of 2021, it's I think deserving of the win. I really think it has a very good shot of winning. Of course, I haven't seen all of the nominees. I've only seen a couple of them, but I think it can and should win. And it's a good movie.
It is a good movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo mostly what you guys have said. I I would be very happy if it won. I do think that there are some. I've seen some other of the nominees, and I think there's some accomplishments in filmmaking that are really outstanding in certain films that we will get to, and that makes me question. Will the Academy go with this is a very politically charged film? Will they go with a politically charged film with a good message, a well executed message that is powerful, impactful, and whatnot? Or will they go with like the really highbrow art route? That's what I'm just kind of waiting to see. There's one film that I'm thinking of. If you can guess it, you get some brownie points from me. But I'm not going to say what it is. And so this film I think is our like message film, our political film from the nominees this year. And it would be great if it's nominated. I mean, Shaka King is a filmmaker of color, and it's a very diverse cast, and it's stories that everyone should know. And so it's stories that deserve to be told, at least. And I think it's great that it has gotten the platform that it has as a result of being distributed online. I watched it at home, which was awesome. I could pause the movie and take a pee break whenever I wanted, instead of having to miss one of the most important scenes. But I look forward to seeing how it does at the Academy Awards. I definitely think that Lakeith Stanfield or Daniel Kaluuya should win for one of their acting performances. I mean, it's truly outstanding.
Yeah, they'll be walking away with the trophy. I sincerely hope so.
I think this film will get at least one little golden statue. All right.
Little golden Oscar.
So we don't really have we don't have a list to put it on because it stays there at the top. But we are going to then go off. We're going to find another film to watch. I think we actually know what it's going to be. We're not really doing it randomly this time. Just it's a little easier for scheduling and whatnot to know exactly what we're watching in and what order. So Tanner, you want to tell us what we are going to be talking about next?
We are watching The Sound of Metal. Starring
Riz. I think there's the on it. I think it's
just Sound of Metal. Excuse me.
Sound of Metal.
Starring Riz Ahmed and Paul Raci, directed by what's his name? I should have this pulled up. What's his name? Darius Rucker, I believe is his name.
Who was like the musician?
Did I just pull that name? Hang on, hold up.
Because Darius Rucker is a country singer.
Yeah, so it's Darius Martyr. Close.
Okay.
I'm not as adept as Timo or Tucker when they have these things pulled up already. I just try to pull them off the dome. But regardless, we are watching Sound of Metal for next week, or for the next installment, I guess, since we're doing 2 of these a week. Basically.
Yeah. So we got to get through them before the ceremony. So thank you for joining me. Next week, we're going to have a list. We're going to have a ranking. We'll see where Sound of Metal stacks up against Judas and the Black Messiah. I'm excited to watch the film. I haven't seen it yet. And then talk about it. All right. We will catch you in a couple days. All right. Peace.